My name is Tom Keller, and the night my life blew apart started with my brother-in-law pointing a greasy chicken leg at my 79-year-old father and saying, "Okay, boomer, nobody cares." My wife laughed. 6 months later, 200 people would be staring at that same boomer with their mouths shut. New Year's Eve in Cedar Rapids, Iowa isn't much to look at. Dirty snow stacked along the curbs, salt on your boots, a wind that makes you wish you'd moved south years ago. That night, it was also my dad's first time out since he'd come home from Mercy Medical Center after a heart scare. "Take it slow, Dad," I said as he climbed our front steps, one hand on the railing, the other on his chest. "I'm taking it slow," he grumbled. "Don't need a spotter for 3 steps." Walter Keller looked like any other retired factory guy in town. Brown sport coat polished thin at the elbows, gray hair combed straight back, deep lines in his face. He was thinner than he used to be, but his eyes were still clear and steady. Inside our house smelled like garlic mashed potatoes and ham from the Hy-Vee deli. Lisa had set the old oak table with our good white plates and $2 store candles. Megan had taped up a crooked Happy New Year sign she'd cut from printer paper. Lisa came out of the kitchen with a dish towel in her hands. She pecked my cheek and gave Dad a quick, careful hug. "Walter, you look good," she said in that bright, polite voice she saves for clients. "Color's back. You scared us with that little heart thing." "Scared me too," he said. "Still on the right side of the grass, though." My brother-in-law, Darren, leaned in the doorway with a beer. Backwards cap, tight polo, new boots. He works shipping at the same company I do, Northridge Tools, and he says blue collar like it's a brand. "Fresh out of ICU, huh, Walt?" he said. "Bet the nurses spoiled you." Dad gave him a flat look and didn't bother answering. Megan came in from the dining room, 16, and all elbows and enthusiasm. "Grandpa, you made it," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "I saved you the seat next to me so you can tell more stories about Dad burning grilled cheese." His face softened. "That boy could burn water," he said. "Good thing you got your mother's brains." We moved to the dining room. The table looked like most Midwestern holidays: ham potatoes, green bean casserole, rolls. Megan had written Grandpa Walt on a folded index card and set it at the chair to my left. Darren claimed the far end like it was his job. Lisa sat between us. The first part of dinner was harmless. Whether the Iowa game, Megan's finals. Dad ate slow, coughed into his napkin now, and then listening more than talking. Then Megan, trying to brag on him, lit the fuse. "Tell Darren about the 3 jobs," she said. "The gas station and the plant and fixing tractors. He never believes you did all that." Darren snorted. "Back then you could pay for college with a handful of pennies and a handshake," he said. "Whole different planet. Doesn't count." Dad set his fork down and looked at him. "Different, sure," he said. "Didn't have folks complaining about how hard they had it while they watched a 50-inch TV. I almost smiled. That was Walter, dry as dust, but not wrong. Darren didn't like it. He leaned back, took a long pull on his beer, cheeks turning red. "You boomers love that line," he said. "Back in my day, this, back in my day, that. You could buy a house with a 6-pack and a promise. Try that now, old man." Lisa laughed, too quick, too loud. "He's not wrong," she said. "Sometimes it feels like your generation used everything up and left us the bill." Dad didn't answer them. He turned to Megan. "When I was your age," he said, "our car wouldn't start at 20 below. I walked 5 miles to school in January, pumped gas at a Sinclair at night so your great-grandparents could keep the lights on. 10 years later, I bought into a machine shop no banker wanted to touch." Megan's eyes were big. She loved his stories. I did too, if I'm honest. Darren rolled his eyes, grabbed a chicken leg, and waved it like a pointer. "Here we go," he said. "The walking in the snow story. Let me guess, uphill both ways, right, Pops?" Grease dripped from the chicken onto the tablecloth as he pointed it straight at my dad. "Look," he said louder now, "nobody asked Boomer. Nobody cares what it was like in 19 whatever. This is our world. We're the ones working 2 jobs because your generation screwed everything up." The TV laughed from the living room at something no one at our table heard. Down here, the only other sound was the furnace kicking on. Lisa shook her head and chuckled like she was embarrassed for him. "Okay, Boomer," she added sing-song, not even looking in his direction. "Let's not turn New Year's into another back in my day speech. We're just trying to eat." Something climbed up the back of my neck. I opened my mouth ready to tell Darren to shut it when I felt fingers close around my wrist under the table. My dad's hand, bony warm, still strong. "Tom," he murmured, barely moving his lips. "Don't." He let go and sat back. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his sport coat and pulled out his old leather wallet. He flipped it open, thumbed through it, and took out a single quarter. He set it in front of his plate. The metal caught the light from the chandelier. With one finger, he slid it down the table until it stopped just in front of Darren's plate. "I was born the year that coin was minted," he said quietly. "1943. It's been through more than you ever will." Darren stared at it confused. Lisa glanced at it and looked away. Dad pushed his chair back. The scrape of wood on wood sounded louder than it should have. "I appreciate the food," he said, looking at Megan, then at me. He skipped over Lisa and Darren like they weren't there. "But I'm more tired than I thought. Doctor wouldn't love that I'm out this late." "I'll drive you," I said, already standing. Lisa frowned. "Tom, dessert." "We'll be back," I said. "Save us a piece." On the porch, I helped him into his heavy winter coat. Up close, I saw the pallor under his skin and the tremor in his hands. "You didn't have to say anything," I muttered as I opened the door. Could have just let him make a fool of himself. He stepped into the cold breath, puffing white in the porch light. For a second, he looked very small against the dark street in the dirty snowbanks. "Some people don't need help making fools of themselves," he said. "But you don't correct them at your granddaughter's table." We drove to his little house on the east side, mostly in silence. The heater rattled, blowing lukewarm air. Out beyond the streetlights, the fields were just dark humps under snow. A low AM station mumbled about corn prices and winter storms. "Guys like your brother-in-law, Dad," said, finally still watching the dark. "I've known 100 of them. Thought grease under a man's nails meant there was nothing in his head." "He's married to my wife," I said. "Makes him hard to avoid." Dad snorted. "Family just means they can swing from closer," he said. "Doesn't mean you stand there and take it." We pulled up to the same one-story house I grew up in. Porch light on ceramic goose by the steps, wearing the faded scarf my mom had tied on it years ago. At the door, he turned to me. "You did right tonight," he said. "Sometimes walking away is the smart move." "Didn't feel smart," I said. "Felt like I left you alone." He shook his head. "You'll know when it's time not to walk away," he said. "Let Monday take care of itself." At that point, Monday was just another work day at Northridge Tools. I didn't understand what he meant. On the drive back, fireworks were popping faintly over the other side of town. The Johnson's inflatable snowman down the street from us was half deflated, nodding in the wind like it had given up. Everything looked the same, but my stomach felt like I'd swallowed a rock. Inside, Megan was on the couch, under a blanket, watching strangers shout in Times Square. Lisa and Darren were in the kitchen with fresh drinks, voices low and amused. Lisa looked up. "Dad get home okay?" she asked. "He's fine," I said. "Tired." Darren smirked. "Whole generation's tired," he said. "Maybe it's time they all sat down and let us run things." I didn't answer. I walked past them to the dining room and picked up the quarter still sitting by Darren's empty plate. 1943. The numbers were worn but clear. It felt cold and heavier than a coin should. I slipped it into my pocket. That quarter was still there, pressing against my leg. The Monday morning my dad walked into the cafeteria at Northridge Tools, and everyone finally found out which boomer they'd been laughing at. Monday morning in Cedar Rapids always hits the same way: gray sky, crusted snow, and a kind of quiet that makes you wonder if the whole world overslept. I woke up feeling like someone had poured sand in my joints. The quarter from the night before was still in the pocket of my jeans on the chair, and for a long minute I just stared at it. Lisa was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, hair pulled back, laptop open, headset around her neck. HR people never really turn off. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Big day, first payroll of the year." "It's 7:30, I said. She typed something, still not looking at me. "Well, Darren already left. Said he wanted to get ahead of whatever nonsense your father might try today." That caught me off guard. "My father, he's at home, Lisa, resting." She finally looked at me just long enough to send a message I couldn't fully read. Annoyance, smugness, fear she wouldn't admit to. "Tom," she said, "he embarrassed himself at dinner. That little dramatic coin thing? It was weird. Today's a work day. Let's hope he doesn't make it worse." "Worse than what?" I asked. She shrugged attention back on the screen. "Boomer pride is loud, that's all." That was the first moment I felt something shift between us. Not a crack. More like a seam splitting just a little. Outside, the cold bit straight through my coat. My windshield was iced over, Lisa's wasn't. She hadn't bothered to start mine, not even for Megan's early bus. I scraped the glass with a hotel rewards card and muttered through my frozen breath. Northridge Tools sits off Blair's Ferry Road, a long, low building with too few windows and too many stories. We make metal cutting tools end mills, drill bits, carbide inserts. Not glamorous, but steady work. As I pulled into the lot, Darren's new blue Ford F-150 practically sparkled in its parking space. He'd been bragging about it for weeks. Inside, everything felt wrong. People stood in little groups whispering. Phones went dark when I walked by. Someone from engineering nodded at me with the stiff politeness you use around funeral homes. At my cubicle, I set down my lunch and coat. Before I even sat, I heard two admin assistants whispering in the hallway. Who told him? No idea, maybe corporate. What if it's true? Well, he's here. I saw him go upstairs. I stepped out, saw who upstairs. They both froze like I was holding a flashlight on rabbits. One mumbled just, someone from corporate, and they practically ran. Before I could chase that thread, my desk phone rang. Tom Keller, I said. A clipped voice answered, conference room B. Now please. It was the CEO's assistant. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the quarter from my pocket without thinking and slipped it into my fist. The elevator ride to the third floor felt longer than the last 2 years combined. The third floor is polished wood, glass walls, carpet that doesn't crunch with salt. Most of us in project management rarely go there. When I pushed open the door to conference room B, I thought maybe I'd walked into the wrong meeting. At the head of the table sat my father. He was in a charcoal gray suit. I'd never seen white shirt, crisp tie knotted perfectly. His hair combed back, his face unreadable. He looked nothing like the tired old man who had ridden home with me Saturday night. To his right was Eric Halston, our CEO. To his left sat a woman I recognized as the company's attorney, Margaret Sloan, the kind who never smiles unless someone else is losing. Behind them on the credenza were two thick binders I'd never seen before. When my father saw me, he just nodded. Tom. I closed the door behind me. Dad, what's going on? Eric motioned to a chair halfway down the table. Have a seat, Tom. I stayed standing. Is everything all right? Did something happen? Dad folded his hands. Sit down, son. I sat. Eric cleared his throat. Tom, I imagine this is unexpected. Walter asked us to make this meeting a priority. Walter, I repeated. You mean my dad? Eric blinked hard as if it was odd I'd say that. Yes, Mr. Keller. I looked at Dad. He wasn't leaning back casually. He sat forward, elbows on the table, the way someone does when they're used to calling the room to order. Margaret opened a file. Northridge Tools is wholly owned by Keller Industrial Holdings, LLC, she said in a flat voice. Effective since 1999. My heart stopped. What? Dad nodded once. 25 years. I looked from one face to another. Hold on. That's not possible. You worked at Ridgeway Machine. You retired. You never. Ridgeway Machine is what Northridge Tools was before we expanded, he said. I bought it with two partners. Bought them out in '05, quietly. Quietly, I said. I've worked here 18 years. You earned your way, he said. I wasn't going to take that from you. Eric added most of the ownership interests were managed through the holding company. Senior staff knew, not many others. I stared at my father, really stared. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't actually know the full man sitting in front of me. Dad continued, I came today because something happened Saturday night that made me look into a few things I should have looked into sooner. He didn't need to explain what. I felt my ears grow hot. Dad, listen. I'm sorry. Darren was out of line. Lisa laughed, but she didn't mean. This isn't about the words he cut in. It's about the patterns, the complaints I've received, the behavior in departments your in-laws just happen to be part of. He slid one of the binders forward. Inside were printouts, time records, Slack logs, HR files. I swallowed hard. Complaints. Margaret answered 3 anonymous HR complaints not processed, 2 deleted from the system, 5 reports of verbal harassment in shipping, overtime falsification, misconduct toward junior staff. My head swam. Deleted by who? Dad didn't blink. Your wife. I flinched like he'd slapped me. She wouldn't cover anything illegal. I'm afraid she did, Margaret said. We have timestamp logs. My breath felt shallow. Everything inside me tensed. Dad, I whispered, please, don't make this personal. Don't go after them because of dinner. I can talk to Lisa. I can talk to Darren. It won't happen again. Dad's jaw tightened the smallest movement, but I felt it like thunder. This is not revenge, he said. If I wanted revenge, I'd have opened my mouth at your table. He leaned closer. This, he said, tapping the binder as accountability. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. I don't want to lose my family over this, I said quietly. Your family, he paused, or your comfort. That landed like a hammer. Eric folded his hands. Walter has initiated an external audit of HR and shipping. We'll conduct interviews. We'll follow procedure. Nothing rash. Dad added, but I'm not ignoring what's been ignored. Not anymore. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the vents. Finally, Dad stood. Everyone else stood with him, even the CEO. That shocked me almost as much as the rest. He walked to the door, hand on the knob, and looked at me. There's more you need to see, he said, but not yet. Dad. He held up a hand. Let Monday take care of itself, he said again. Then he left the room, the attorney and CEO following him out. I sat alone a while, staring at the chair he'd just been in. My father owned the company. My wife had deleted complaints. My brother-in-law had been bullying workers for years, and I'd been asleep at the wheel. When I finally stood to leave, the quarter in my pocket felt heavier than a coin had any right to be. Something was coming, and whatever it was, none of us were ready. Monday didn't explode all at once. It started with small cracks. By 9, Northridge tools fell off. Folks from departments I never worked with found reasons to walk past my cube. Conversation stopped when I got close. A machinist I'd joked with for years just gave me a tight nod and kept going. The quarter in my pocket felt heavier than my keyring. Around 9:30, Lisa showed up at the end of my row, tablet hugged to her chest, HR badge bright against her blouse. We need to talk, she said. In here, I asked. She scanned the open cubes. Break room, now. The break room smelled like burned coffee. She shut the door behind us and turned on me. What is he doing, she said. Who? She gave me a look. Could have melted ice. Your father, Tom. Don't play stupid. External auditors, HR, and shipping. What is this? I tried to keep my voice level. He met with Eric and legal. There are complaints. They're taking a look. Complaints are half my inbox, she snapped. We sort the real from the nonsense. That's my job. Now some 79-year-old boomer strolls in, calls himself owner, and suddenly my entire department is under investigation because he didn't like a joke at dinner. It wasn't just a joke, I said. Her eyes narrowed. You're really doing this, picking his side. There aren't sides, I said. There's what happened. There's what got ignored. She stared at me for a beat. He showed you logs. Not yet, I said. But the attorney says there are deleted complaints. Something flickered across her face. Guilt or fear or both. Sometimes, she said slowly, you take care of things before they turn into drama. You don't let every whiner drag the company into a mess. That's what I meant when I told Emily to stop being so sensitive. Emily, I cut in, from accounting. She realized she'd said too much and clamped her mouth shut. You need to talk to him, she said. Make this go away. I can't tell him how to run his company, I said. You're his son, she shot back. If you don't stop him, he will take my job. And if that happens, Tom, I am not going to sit here and smile while you two blow up everything I built. She stepped closer, voice dropping. And if he takes my job, I'm not leaving Megan in this town with you and your father turning our lives upside down. My sister's in Schaumburg. Good schools. Spare room. Don't think I won't go. My chest tightened. She's my daughter too. Then act like it, she said. Fix this. She walked out, leaving me alone with the humming refrigerator and a coffee pot gone to sludge. The rest of the morning felt like watching a storm roll in. People were called into conference rooms and came out pale or tight-lipped. Shipping guys avoided eye contact. A line supervisor I'd worked with 15 years just patted my shoulder once in the hall, like he was sorry for something he couldn't say. Close to noon, my cell buzzed with a number I didn't know. Tom Keller. Mr. Keller, this is Margaret Sloan, the company attorney said. Walter would like to meet you off-site. Hy-Vee Cafe on Edgewood, noon. Is everything okay? I asked. Things are proceeding, she said, which wasn't an answer, and hung up. Hy-Vee at lunch is loud and bright and smells like coffee and fried chicken. The cafe sits by the windows. Dad was in a corner booth, jacket off sleeves, rolled big hands around a cup of black coffee. He watched me slide in across from him. You look like you've been chewing tinfoil, he said. Lisa's furious, I said. She says you're trying to wreck her life. Is that what she calls it, he asked. She also said if this takes her job, she'll take Megan to Illinois to live with her sister. He stirred his coffee once. Ah, he said, there it is. There, what is the leverage, he said. When people are caught, they don't apologize. They reach for a hostage. She's scared, I said. We all are. You showed up in a suit and suddenly there are lawyers. Audits. You could have just talked to us. Would you have listened? He asked. I didn't have a good answer. Before I could find one, a shadow fell across the table. A young woman in a Northridge polo stood there twisting her hands together. I recognized her from accounting. Dark hair and a ponytail. Name tag Emily. Hi, Mr. Keller, she said. Hi, Tom. Have a seat, Emily, Dad said. His voice softened. Only if you want to. She slid into the booth beside him, eyes darting between us. You already talked to Mrs. Sloan, he said. You don't owe us anything else. I just thought my son should hear at least one story behind those nonsense complaints. She took a breath like she was about to jump in cold water. Last spring, she said shipping was behind on a big order. Darren told me to backdate the ship date so it looked like we hit the deadline. I told him I couldn't. He laughed and said I could either be a team player or be gone. I heard Darren's fake friendly tone in my head. I filed a complaint, she went on, filled out the form, took it to HR. I never heard anything. When I asked Lisa, she said sometimes things get lost and I needed to stop being so sensitive if I didn't want a reputation. My throat tightened. The second time, she said he yelled at me on the floor in front of everyone. Called me useless. Said if I worked as hard as I ate donuts, maybe I'd matter. People laughed. I couldn't look anyone in the eye for a week. Her voice shook. She wiped at one eye with the heel of her hand. I filed another complaint, she said. 2, actually. Nothing. After a while, I figured it was me. Maybe I just wasn't tough enough. Dad's jaw clenched. When the auditors pulled the log, he said quietly, those complaints were there. Then they were gone. Both times. Deleted under one login. He looked at me. I knew whose. Lisa, I said. Your wife, he said, on a Monday afternoon. Emily looked from him to me. When they told us who you were, she said, nodding at Dad, I thought maybe things might change. But if you're all just covering for each other, then I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not covering for anybody, I said. The words felt thin. I didn't know. I should have, but I didn't. I'm sorry, Emily. She gave a small shrug. Hearing it helped, she said. But what happens next is what matters. She slid out of the booth. Thank you for talking to us, Dad said. Thank you for listening, she replied and walked away into the lunchtime noise. Dad watched me over his cup. You think I came here to settle a dinner score, he said. I came here because people like her have been getting walked on while we all look the other way. I'm done looking away. What if fixing it breaks my marriage, I asked. He took a sip, then set the cup down. If your marriage depends on you ignoring this, he said, it's already broken. You're just now seeing the crack. We sat in silence a while, listening to carts rattle and kids complain. Finally, he reached into a worn leather briefcase at his side and pulled out a large manila envelope. He set it on the table between us. This isn't for today, he said. Margaret will hand it to you when the time comes. I just want you to know it exists. What is it, I asked. Paperwork, he said. About some property your wife and her brother are proud of. You mean the rental house, I said, on Oakview. He didn't answer. He just slid the envelope back into the briefcase. You'll understand when you see it, he said. For now, do your job. Let the process run. Let Friday take care of itself. Back at the plant, an email from Eric hit everyone's inbox. Mandatory company meeting. Friday, 3 p.m., cafeteria. Do not schedule conflicting events. The rest of the week crawled. People whispered all hands like it was a bad word. Darren strutted around shipping like nothing touched him. Lisa came home late, said she was working with legal and didn't want to talk about it. When I mentioned Emily's name, she shut down completely. On Friday morning, Margaret met me in a small conference room, shut the door, and slid that same manila envelope across the table. Walter asked me to give you this today, she said. Terminations are finalized. You'll hear the details with everyone else. My fingers felt clumsy as I opened it. Inside was a copy of a deed, the Articles of Organization for a limited liability company with a name I'd never heard and a 30-day notice to vacate addressed to tenants of 712 Oakview. 712 Oakview was the rental house Lisa and Darren talked about. Like it was their badge of adulthood, the place they said proved they were building something. They'd signed the purchase papers together 3 years earlier. I'd painted the back bedroom myself one summer weekend. At the bottom of the deed in blue ink was a signature I knew better than my own. Walter J. Keller. My father didn't just own the place they worked. He owned the place they thought they owned. Friday at Northridge Tools always has a different feel. Lighter voices plans for the weekend, the smell of someone's microwaved leftovers drifting through the halls. But not this Friday. This Friday felt like a church before a funeral. By noon, people weren't even pretending to work. You could feel the tension in the air the same way you can feel humidity before a storm. Quiet conversations at printers, doors closing softly, eyes darting every time a manager walked by. The mandatory meeting was set for 3 p.m. in the cafeteria, and by 2:30 folks were already lining the walls. The cafeteria at Northridge Tools is just a big echoing room with plastic tables, flickering fluorescent lights, and Pepsi machines that never quite work. But that day the room felt like a courtroom. I stood near the front, hands in my pockets, the quarter rolling between my fingers. I didn't know whether to sit or stand or leave or stay. My stomach was tight enough to cut steel. At 2:55, Darren swaggered in with 2 guys from shipping. He looked cocky, smiling, slapping shoulders, making a joke loud enough for everyone to hear. Probably want us all here to announce something stupid like a safety campaign, he said. Or maybe the old man's going to teach us how to walk uphill both ways. Laughter from the shipping guys. A few uneasy glances from everyone else. 2 minutes later, Lisa entered from the opposite side of the room. Sharp blazer hair, tight tablet under her arm, HR face on. Her eyes found me, then darted away. She looked scared. The room quieted all at once, not gradually, but like someone flipped a switch. Because Walter had walked in. No fanfare, no microphone, no announcement. He just stepped up onto the small riser they used for holiday parties, holding nothing but a sheet of paper in one hand, and I noticed the quarter in the other. Eric, the CEO, Margaret, the attorney, and 2 board members followed behind him. They didn't sit. They stood. When a CEO stands, people notice. When a board stands, people get nervous. When the man quietly holding the deed to the company stands in front of 200 employees, people stop breathing. Dad scanned the room like he was checking attendance at an old church meeting. "Good afternoon," he said. No microphone, but somehow his voice carried. "I'm Walter Keller. Some of you know me. Most of you don't. I've owned Northridge Tools for 25 years, and for most of that time I've stayed out of the way and let good people do their jobs." A murmur rippled through the room, shock, confusion, whispered profanity. Dad continued steady as a metronome. "This company was built on simple things. Hard work, integrity, respect. You treat people right, you get treated right. You cut corners, you get cut out." He paused. "And lately," he said, "I've learned not everyone in this building follows those rules." Across the room, Darren let out a snort. "Oh, perfect," he said loudly. "Here we go. The boomer sermon. Guess he didn't get enough applause at dinner." All heads snapped toward him. My heart stopped. Dad didn't blink. He set the quarter on the podium like it was a gavel. "I was born the year this coin was minted," he said evenly. 1943. "And in all those years, I've seen a lot of men run their mouths when they think no one's watching." A hush fell so deep every breath felt loud. "But this week," he said, "I watched and listened." He nodded to Margaret. She tapped her tablet and the cafeteria projector flickered on. The first slide appeared, occurrence log shipping department. Then overtime summary, audit findings. Falsified entries, user D. Matthews. A few gasps. Darren crossed his arms. "Everyone does that," he muttered. "We work around deadlines." Dad didn't respond. Another slide. Screenshots of Slack messages, blurred employee names, clear sender, Darren M. Shipping. The messages themselves hit like punches. "Old man upstairs needs a nap. If the boomers would retire, we'd run this place right. Tom's senile old man isn't scary, he's dust." Emily cried again. "Should have brought donuts. HR will wipe it. Lisa always does." A noise rose in the room, something between disbelief and anger. Emily, standing with the accounting team, lowered her eyes. Someone put a hand on her arm. Dad looked up at Darren. "You have anything you want to say?" he asked. Darren laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Yeah, he said. I want to know why everyone's acting like this is a trial. The old guy gets his feelings hurt and suddenly we're digging up old chat logs. This is ridiculous. You're 79. Retire already. Dead silence. He kept going louder. You're a boomer trying to run a modern company. No wonder things get screwed up. We're the ones doing the real work. Dad inhaled slowly, put one hand on the podium, and tapped the 1943 quarter just once. But the sound echoed. You don't talk to me that way, he said softly. But more importantly, you don't talk to my people that way. Another slide appeared. HR record file access log deleted by L. Keller. Complaint IDs 1742A, 1743F. Lisa's face drained of color. She shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. This isn't what it looks like. Someone from the back called looks exactly like what it looks like. Margaret stepped forward. After reviewing these findings, she said, voice crisp, and after completing all required interviews, Northridge Tools has determined that both employees, Darren Matthews of Shipping and Lisa Keller of Human Resources, have violated company policy, falsified records, and knowingly obstructed formal complaints. Lisa stumbled forward. Tom, she said desperately, tell them they're twisting this. Tell them I was trying to keep things from blowing up. I swallowed hard. My throat closed. Dad didn't look at her. He didn't need to. He looked at the whole room. As owner, he said, I am terminating both of them, effective immediately. The reaction wasn't loud at first. It began as a stunned wave, a collective exhale, the sound of people realizing they were allowed to feel relief. Then someone clapped. Then someone else. Then the entire cafeteria, 200 employees, stood and applauded. A few people whistled. Some pounded the tables. Emily wiped tears from her cheeks. Even the machinists in the back, the ones who never show emotion, stood straighter, nodding slowly. And then from near the front, a small figure rose from her chair. Mrs. Dolores, 68, tiny, hunched, 40 years in accounting. She leaned on her cane as she stepped forward. Her voice trembled but carried. I have been here since this company had 12 employees, she said. I never thought I'd live long enough to see the day justice walked into this room. She looked at Dad. Thank you, Walter. Her words cracked something open. The applause swelled, rolling like thunder across the cafeteria. Darren tried to shout back, this isn't legal, I'll sue, but no one heard him over the clapping. Lisa broke. I saw her collapse into a chair, hand over her mouth, staring at me with betrayal and pleading mixed together. But I couldn't move. Dad's hand came to rest on the podium, steady, firm. His eyes locked on mine for just a heartbeat, pride, sorrow, resolve, all tangled together. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Margaret. Notices delivered. 30 days. They'll receive them tonight. I closed my eyes. The storm that began at my dining room table had reached its center. And the worst of it wasn't over. The applause from that Friday afternoon stayed in my head all weekend. Even when the house went quiet at night, even when I tried to sleep, I kept hearing it. The rolling, rising sound of 200 people finally letting go of something they'd been holding in for too long. By Monday morning, everything felt different, though nothing in Cedar Rapids had changed. Same gray sky, same snowbanks stained with road salt, same breath fog on my glasses as I walked to the car. But inside my chest, something had shifted. Something old and heavy had finally clicked into place. Lisa wasn't home when Megan and I got up for school. She'd stayed at her sister's in Chicago for the weekend, said she needed space. I didn't argue. The house felt lighter without the tension of her silence hanging over it. Megan poured cereal at the kitchen counter, still in her oversized hoodie. Dad, she asked, is Mom okay? I hesitated. There's no manual for moments like that. She's figuring some things out, I said. Are you two getting divorced? She asked bluntly, the way 16-year-olds do when they've been thinking too much. We're not sure yet, I said. But no matter what happens, this house, this town, your school, your team, you're not going anywhere. She nodded like she already knew. Good. Then she picked up her backpack and kissed my cheek, something she hadn't done in months. After dropping her off, I drove to Northridge on autopilot. When I pulled into the lot, I noticed something right away. Darren's F-150 was gone. Lisa's sedan was gone. 2 empty parking spaces that used to feel like territory markers. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, not triumphant, not gossipy, just calm. People were doing their jobs, speaking in normal voices again. Emily from accounting caught my eye as she passed. Morning, Tom. No fear, no shrinking, just normal. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd seen her walk like that. Around 10, Dad texted me from a number he barely used. VFW post, lunch, 12:15, bring yourself. The VFW post on 42nd Street always smells like coffee burnt an hour ago and floor polish from the 70s. Plaques line the walls, names of men who served long before I was born. Most days, a few retirees sit at the corner table playing cribbage. Dad was there when I walked in picking at a bowl of chili he probably shouldn't have ordered with his heart condition. He waved me over. "You look tired," he said. "So do you." "I'm 79, he said dryly. "What's your excuse?" We sat quietly for a moment. He sipped his black coffee, wincing a little at the heat. "How's Megan?" he asked. "Worried," I said, "but she's tougher than she looks." "Good," he said. "Kids should be tough, not hard, tough." He took another sip. "And Lisa?" he asked without looking at me. "I don't know," I said. "She's angry, says she lost everything." Dad snorted softly. "She lost the things she used to hide the truth from herself. There's a difference." "You think I should let the marriage end?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair and looked straight at me. "I think you should stop pretending the marriage you had was the marriage you wanted," he said. "You didn't break it. You just finally saw the cracks." That landed so hard I couldn't speak. We finished eating mostly in silence. Outside, the wind kicked up small ghosts of snow across the parking lot. Dad walked slow, steady, gripping the railing as he stepped down. "Where now?" I asked. He looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen in a long time. "Your mother's waiting," he said. Valentine's Day, the one day a year he never missed. We drove to Cedar Memorial Park in silence. I'd been there hundreds of times, funerals, old classmates, uncles, neighbors, but walking next to Dad toward my mother's headstone always slowed time. He brushed the snow from the granite with his sleeve. The letters came into view. Eleanor Marie Keller, 1939, 2011, beloved wife and mother. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard in the cold. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the 1943 quarter, the same one he'd pushed across my dining room table, the same one he'd tapped on the podium. He set it gently on top of the stone. "She always said you had a good heart," he murmured. "Said you'd stand up when it mattered most. Took you 52 years, but you did it." My chest tightened, and for the first time since all this started, I felt tears burn behind my eyes. I didn't hide them. Dad didn't either. Sometimes fathers and sons don't need words, just quiet, cold air and the weight of old memories. We stayed there until the wind turned sharp and the tips of our ears went numb. Dad squeezed my shoulder once, steady, warm, familiar. Back in the truck, the heater wheezed to life. Dad stared through the windshield at nothing in particular. "People think respect is something you demand," he said finally. "No, son. Respect is something you give first, and if they throw it on the ground, you pick it up and build something they can never touch." He turned to me. "And you did. This week you did." I swallowed hard. I didn't do much. "You did the hardest part," he said. "You didn't look away." The heater clicked. Snow drifted against the tires, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. Later that night, after Megan was in bed and the house was quiet, I sat alone at the kitchen table where everything had begun, where Darren had pointed that greasy chicken leg, and where my father had placed his quarter. I reached into my pocket and set my own coin beside the centerpiece, a 2012 quarter Megan had once glued glitter on for a school project. They looked nothing alike, 70 years between them. But they reflected the same kitchen light. And I realized something. The life I was stepping into wasn't smaller without Lisa. It was clearer. Justice had happened in front of 200 people, but the real change had happened in me. And maybe that's what my dad had been waiting for all along. If you've ever had someone laugh at someone you love just because they were older, quieter, or from a different time, then you know the feeling behind this whole story. And if it reminded you of someone in your own life, share it. Someone else might need to hear they're not alone. Thank you for listening.